And welcome back to the Basil Breen Boombox. I am here with Rob MacLeod.
How's it going, everybody?
I wish I had a thought of a nickname for him, but all you need to know is that he's the producer behind my two albums. We've worked on like 20 plus tracks, and there'll be more to follow. And I think he's absolutely brilliant. He's not very good at bragging.
I've decided this year I'm going to say I'm brilliant.
Oh yeah, there we go. This year, this is the year.
New Year's
brilliant, Rob. I need to start believing in myself.
I'm brilliant as well.
Yeah. We all need to believe in ourselves a bit, you know what I mean, as we move into the world. But so, Rob, to get things going, how would you describe what you do and yourself, or whatever you want to do with that question?
In relation to music, like,
I guess in relation to music.
So music, so I suppose I had a big long journey to being so I'm an artist on my own, but I'm not really doing anything with that at the minute. But I've had that journey, so the artist's journey, which is quite interesting, and so that got me into producing records. But so I do that a lot, and then I spent a lot of time in the industry, kind of doing everything from selling gigs out to using online marketing. So I suppose I've been trying to figure what that bit out is, but I suppose it will be like a mentor, manager type that sort of helps people when they don't know what to do, self-manage themselves.
Yes.
You know, and figure out all the parts. I have to kind of pin down what that is, which I'm hoping to do this year before I get any older.
Yes.
But so they'd be the three things, and they all kind of stem from when I started up, because my first road into music was with a music training centre that I set up with a couple of guys that some people might know about, you know, so because it's one of the biggest ones.
Oh, what was that? What is it?
Pulse.
Pulse, yes.
So I was one of the founding members of Pulse.
Oh, for the Pulse College. Oh, yeah.
So I started that with the guys way back in 1993, 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And before that, we were a little studio, and before that, how we got into all of that was two of us used to work for MacLeod Music, which is gone now. It used to be a piano place, but it also sold professional in the ILAC Centre. It also had a professional distributions thing where it sold Akai professional, and I don't know if you've seen, they'd be vintage now, which is only the 80s, but they'd be Akai samplers. Have you heard of those?
Yeah, Akai samplers.
Yeah, so the 3000 and the 1000 and the 5000.
Okay.
And the 900.
Yeah, they were big. They were the first samplers where you could load in your own samples.
Yeah, like, I mean, they, how you used to sell them, you'd have the thing from Peter Gabriel's Sledgehammer at the beginning. Da-da-da-da-da-da. You just press the key and play the whole classics. You know, that's how we used to sell them. Yeah. And but we learned how to use all the gear from them.
Just by being there?
Just by, and we learned how to
that was
record.
In the 90s?
That was in the 80s.
In the 80s?
Yeah.
You were around when, like, the technology...
85 and 86, yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
So that's probably when I started using the technology.
Do you remember any of the synthesizers that came in?
Yeah, I know them all. Like,
my goodness.
All the ones you think are vintage to me are like, oh, I know that one. So just before I started, there was the Juno 106.
Yes.
So that was great. One of my favourite bands at the time, Duran Duran, I think, had those.
Oh, yeah.
And then there was the D50s and the D20s. That was the next upgrade from Roland. Then they moved on to the Phantom and the 2080. And they were all the big keepers. Then there was the DX7, which everyone used to rave about. And I used to get, and I go, why do all the sounds sound so plinky? You know?
But that's it. It's like a square wave or something. It has that like hollowness to it or something.
Yeah, but you realise it's because they're going through millions of pounds worth of mixing desks.
Yeah.
But and then there was the Casios had ones that weren't popular at the time, but became very popular later. And then one of the Korg ones was the SH101. But there was another one that came out, the Micro Korg.
The Micro
didn't come
Korg
out till the 90s, I think.
No, it was 1990. Like that's like a lot of early dance music.
Yeah, and it's still a big, and it was great actually.
Yeah,
it's really good.
Yeah, because I'm getting into all that stuff, but I
had one of them.
Did you?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
So they were the first they could have been the first digital synthesizers. So before that, there was synthesizers that worked on like electrical circuits.
Yeah, like the Moogs and stuff.
Yeah,
people would have them. I remember doing gigs and there'd be guys and they'd have their Yamaha one and the Moog. Yeah.
They're so expensive now.
Yeah.
There's one called the Yamaha CS80 and it's like used in kind of Blade 2 and all these dreamscapes.
Is it kind of black with a back kind of rectangular back that stands up.
It could. It's very. You'd know if you've seen it. But there's this company coming out now. B-Hammer. But they're remaking all the vintage stuff. So like the Lindrum machine. They've remade the Lindrum. They're remaking like the DX7. Like, but they're not like. There's no copyright. They're just kind of making up their own name and basing it on it. And it's kind of in this weird legal grey area.
Well, don't you have the Arturo? Don't they have all the
They have it all,
yeah.
But they're kind of... and they have to name them differently depending on if they got the license or not.
Yeah.
But the Prophet, like, there's the... Who made the Prophet?
5.
Prophet 5, yeah.
I think that's Roland as well, is it?
It could be... sequential?
Oh, it could be... Yeah.
Anyway, there's loads
and
of
then there's the Fairlights, which
the Fairlights, they're mental. Did you ever see one of them?
No,
They were like big computer consoles.
Yeah, they were mad-looking things. They were like a computer thing and then a keyboard. And it was basically a sampler.
Yes.
But it was like ridiculous money. Like,
yeah. When did Pro Tools come into the picture?
So I think from
Pro
what I remember, Cubase came first.
Yeah. Oh, Cubase came first
with the Atari 1040.
So these were like, imagine your first.
This was just a MIDI program. There was no audio station on it first.
Okay.
So it started off as a MIDI sequencer on computer. So you could only do MIDI instruments, and then you'd have to sync it to tape with a SMPTE thing called a SMPTE code, which was like it went, and it would lock the computer and the tape together. Which was very funny.
To play an instrument on the computer?
So you could play live. You know the way we can record live instruments into a computer now?
Yes.
You didn't do it that way. What you did was your whole MIDI instrument section was connected to a reel-to-reel.
Okay.
And it used this code called MTC code, MIDI time clock.
Which kept the time.
Which was obviously giving a pulse to the computer, like an audio pulse, which it was then turning into a digital signal, and it would keep the sequencer. It was so complicated.
Oh my god!
It was like, and then they tried to bring in. So then Cubase turned into. Oh, then Pro Tools came in, and Pro Tools I think was only 4 tracks at the start. I think because I was doing an album in what's called the Factory. I don't know if they're still there. It's a big rehearsal room. A lot of the bigger bands go there. But I was doing my own album in a place called Totally Wired, and we used 24-inch tape, 2-inch tape, 24-track 2-inch tape. But the guy, Ivan, was starting to use Pro Tools on one of these old Macs with all the green writing on it, you know? And it was like, I was just going, oh my God, how does he do that? I went, this will never take off because it was so clunky and so slow and so crap.
Yeah.
Compared to tape, it was just so bad. But then the next thing, we had the studio. And then the next thing, Cubase turned into Cubase Audio. So you could record. Now suddenly it was... What you do is you'd buy Pro Tools or something like that with the sound cards, and then the program Cubase could be the front end.
Oh,
it would be the interface.
Yes.
Yeah. And then I was using that, and then Logic came up, and that was even better. And then I had Logic for a long time, and I didn't start using Pro Tools until 2008. And it was quite good then.
It's kind of like the industry standard.
Yeah, but in 2008, its MIDI section wasn't very good.
Yes.
So it was great with audio and editing, but Logic was much better for doing like MIDI instruments and for songwriters. Yeah. And but I had to switch over to Pro Tools because all the big studios had it, and they weren't really using. Only the producers were using Logic Audio. And then funny, Logic disappeared for ages.
Yeah.
Logic just became nearly obsolete. But like in the last, I'd say 7 years, it's back with a vengeance, you know?
Yes.
Everyone's got it again, you know? But I think that's because one of the things it does, I haven't seen it, but doesn't it like have things like loads of little samples, say brass riffs. Oh, yes. It gives you the riff. It's not just the...
They have loads of loops.
Loads of loops of brass
that
loops.
They give you, and their instruments are actually very good.
And they're I've heard stuff on
I didn't realise that, because I was like, I need to buy all these special things or whatever. Yeah. But I didn't realise they had their own emulations of like the Mellotron and stuff. Or Rhodes. Or,
and there's loads of stuff done on it. Like I'm thinking of buying that as a second program.
Yeah. But it's 200 quid forever.
Yeah.
So it's pretty good.
Yeah.
And there's this cool stuff now. It has some AI stuff in it, but it basically you can tell it, okay, for this section of the song, these are the chords.
Yes.
And so it's good for just coming up quickly with like...
Well, it's the songwriters too.
Yes.
Yeah, it's great for that. Well, but loads of people are doing records on it now as well.
Yeah, loads of people. Billie Eilish, you know, Phineas, her brother who produced all the songs, he's all about Logic. Lots of people are like this guy, Jacob Collier, a young guy, but he does loads of harmony stuff.
Him as well, yeah.
Where he records like... He hears like microtones. He has perfect pitch.
Yeah.
And he'd record like a chord of like 100 different voices of him singing different notes. It's mental. But he does all that in Logic. But it's all about whatever tool you use and get used to.
Yeah.
I think that's what, like, even from your process that I've seen, like you have a very quick way of just iterating on
well,
how
we
to
can
get
talk about
going.
that when later if you want.
Yeah, of course, But we can, for now, let's continue on with the history of Rob MacLeod. So you were actually in a band, or was it like called Rain?
Yeah. So what happened was I'd written songs for years, and I was telling you before we started, my first attempt at putting some songs out was I was in a couple of bands. It's a funny story about that later on, in that I met one of my band members recently, hadn't seen in 30 years, and then we see each other every week at a songwriter night. But I was in it, and then I kind of went to that. I was in that shop and all at the time, and then I was in a music school. Was where we had sort of Pulse was a studio first. It wasn't a training center, and we had all small stuff. We had an 8-track, and we had an Allen and Heath small desk. I think it was called a G2. I think.
And like a mixing desk.
Yeah, it was really like really all cheap stuff. Like I mean, it would have been great at the time. We would have thought it was the whole thing cost about 10 grand.
Yeah.
Like, and it was like stuff everywhere, you know, keyboards and whatever we could have afforded. But while I was in there, I did a little 5-track demo. I was writing songs, and went to Westland and I recorded them. A guy called Stano helped me produce them. But I ended up, to long story short, I ended up meeting Simon Climie from Climie Fisher in a pub in Queens through a manager guy. And he had heard my tape, and he said, I really liked that song, Maria, which I was kind of surprised because I didn't think it was the strongest song. That was great to hear back then, but I didn't think I was very good at songwriting, you know. I kind of started with thinking I was brilliant and realizing I wasn't very good. Yes. And I had to get better. And I had a little bit of talent. I could play the piano a little bit. And, but I had to really work on my songwriting. So over the years, I worked on songwriting, and I never really worked on playing. So I could play just enough to write my songs. And I always became the person who arranges using a computer. And I used to bring in players. Once I had a rough idea, if I'd have a rough guitar part, I'd get a really good guitar player to come in, and so I did a lot of that first, and I did all of that in Pulse, and I wrote loads of songs. And out of that load of songs, I'd say there's probably 6 that were really good that I didn't realise were really good at the time. And so then I didn't write for years, and I was in Pulse, and I was like teaching people, and it was all great. It was kind of new, and we were young, you know. I mean, we weren't much older than the students at the time. You know, they'd have been early 20s, we'd have been mid, heading to late 20s. So it was all quite, it was quite, and the whole area around Camden Street was all alive, you know. It was the early 90s, and I was teaching a student, and I was telling them that I thought I'd heard of someone. There was a thing called a BES scheme at the time. It was like a tax break for investors, and you could set up your own company and get businesses to invest in you. And I was telling students all of this, and they said, if you're so great, why don't you do it yourself? So I'd written a load of songs. Like, I was big into Oasis, and I kind of was heavily influenced, and I'd written about 10 songs that kind of had that feel off them, but I wrote one in particular that didn't. It was quite an unusual song called Can't Rain All the Time, and I went, fuck it, I'll put it out. Oh, with my loud swear and these.
No, you can do it. I swear for the both of us.
Okay, so I said, I'll put it out. I'll do this. So I went out and I raised money, and I got this band together, and I raised enough to do a really good album, and I recorded it myself, and I got it mixed in the factory. I don't know if the factory's still going, but it was where all the big acts used to rehearse, especially ones coming over to tour. Like when I went in, David Bowie was there, and I actually met him, and he was sitting in on the session at one point listening to one of the songs, which is a bit mad. And so we did the album, and we put it out, and the first song was like, so we had this PR girl, Yvonne McMahon, who since is now Tommy Tiernan's wife, I believe. So it's all a bit mad. But she was promoting us and she was doing great, except she couldn't get it on radio. But we knew someone who knew someone in 104 and got it to the guy, Dave Kelly, who was the director, and he suddenly put it on the playlist. And it just went mad. And that song went mad. And it was like, it was played everywhere. Like, it was played like Crazy World for about a year. It was just mental. Nobody still knows the song now.
Yeah.
Because it only lasted a year and never, and we hadn't kind of sorted out, but it was called Can't Rain All the Time. And it was amazing to hear, you know, and that's kind of where Rain started. And then we put out a couple of other songs and that led to Dave Fanning played it. And we won some competition. We ended up playing in Euro Disney and I met Level 42's manager and he was interested in trying to help us for a little while. And then we finally met Jamelia's manager, and we got signed to Zomba Music, which was quite big at the time. They're now broke, you know, they're sold off. And I had a number one with a really probably my worst recording ever. That's incredible how that happened. But it was a gold disc here for 2 weeks. And that was Rain. Yeah, and then we toured Scandinavia and all. And then I left Pulse at that point. Because I kind of felt like if I'm going to do this music artist thing, I better do it now.
Yes.
And I couldn't do the two.
No.
So I decided to, I don't know whether that was a good decision or a bad decision. I don't know, but I did it. And it was a good decision. And I did it. And that led me to then producing loads of records and stuff. So that was the Rain event in a nutshell.
So Rain, the name just came from that first song, did it?
I'm still trying to keep that name.
Yeah.
I really liked the name. And after we'd done it and we'd put some stuff out, I heard there was a UK band called Rain. That really annoyed me. And that made me feel like I had to change the name.
It's such a common, it's a common word, so it's hard.
Yeah. And I did have a load of songs with the words Rain in it.
Yeah.
So I've about 4 songs that have Rain in the title.
I'm not in the title, but I noticed that I use the rain a lot as a metaphor.
Yeah, yeah.
So when you're listening to your own songs, you're like, geez, I use that rain metaphor a lot for the hard times or whatever.
Yeah.
And so now when I'm writing, and I just wrote a song that had rain, and I'm like, for fuck's sake, because it rhymes so well with like pain, and it's hard to avoid. But I think when you're trying to write new stuff, I'm like, all right, no rain, no. The word world as well. I say that so much. I mean, it's taken over the world, of course.
Oh yeah,
but loads of worlds. Like if you look at that, so.
Basil's world.
I'm trying to cut. But it's such a great word because it says so much.
Yeah.
Like every type of world, like from small to big to, this is the world of the cat. It's a very powerful word. Yeah. And so with powerful words, you can really overuse them, I find.
Well, I mean, the thing with rain, I kind of felt there's all different kinds of rain. Like there's happy rain, there's sad rain, there's disgusting rain, But
that's the same with
there's really drenchy rain.
Humid rain.
Yeah, there's angry rain.
Yeah.
So
it's hard. But if you didn't care, if you just treated every song like its own song and didn't worry about what it looked like in the collection of other songs, and it wouldn't really matter if you used the same words, but there is something in the, as a musician, let's say for me, I don't want to keep repeating the old patterns.
That's true. Yeah.
There's something about that though, that pursuit of a little bit different every time. Yeah. That you'll eventually end up in like a rabbit hole that no one else has been in. Because you were the one that had to travel down. Yeah. And no one else is there now, and you're just there. What's going on?
Yeah.
But with that, after Rain, you decided you were done with because it's probably hard to make money.
Well, yeah. I suppose at the time I had a bit of a big. Your ego in the music business
of course,
you can get it checked pretty fast. And so I'd had a lot of success up until then. Pulse was successful. We were well known. I thought I couldn't do anything wrong, And so I said, this is going to be, we're going to be huge, And it looked like it was going to be. Yeah. Because, we got signed to one of the biggest labels and it was all through effort. It wasn't like accidental.
Yeah.
Like I kind of orchestrated being signed.
Yes.
So, and then while I was in it, I met lots of people who were famous and, like, because we worked in Battery Studios and there were loads of people. Like, the time we were there, Kylie Minogue was there as well. And so were Gomez. So, like, they were recording in different rooms. So that's the level of label that had signed us, was working with these people. And our publisher was. And but I very quickly, I just went, I don't know if this is for me. Because I'm quite private, even though I'm quite extrovert.
Yes.
And I just started, I'd done lots of interviews and all in Dublin and all. And like, I just felt like, oh, you're misquoted. Or I didn't say that. Or this is, and I just kind of went, I don't know if I like this.
Yeah.
So I sort of, and then the band kind of, as usual, as normally happens, is everybody starts falling out with each other when things don't happen quick enough. Yeah. And, that's just part of it. And that all split up. And I just decided I wouldn't go on. And I fell into music production.
Yes.
Yeah, that's kind of what happened next.
It defaulted to that just because you had been doing lots of, I guess, music production.
Yeah, and I just worked on ridiculous amounts of productions. And what's very funny about that is, because I've had someone come back to me recently who I produced way back then, which was probably 2000 or so, 2001. And they played me their album that I did. And actually, the arrangement was pretty good. Like, I mean, the mixing could have been a little bit better, but the arrangement was pretty good. And I was going, wow, I didn't think I could do that back then. And because as you do loads of recordings, there's loads of bad ones.
Yes.
And you forget them all. Like that year, I mean, there was one year where I did 256 backing tracks in a year. Like, you can ask me, how do you get fast?
Yeah,
I'll tell you that.
We'll be getting into that. Yeah,
yeah, and I was mental, and there's all these. I don't even know where all those songs are. There's just so many artists
out there in the world.
I just was artist after artist after artist, and
how were you getting work? Like, was it mostly word of mouth?
Just used to go out and I don't even know how. I did all sorts of different ways to get it. It was quite, at the time, you could still make money out of CDs, so artists were interested in getting recorded.
Yeah.
That whole streaming thing hadn't kicked in.
Yeah.
I don't think that kicked in till about 2005 properly,
Yes,
but like
after Napster.
Yeah, but once that happened, it was a whole different ballgame. But so that went on for a while, and then eventually I set up. I was involved with a bunch of guys with another 6-figure thing, like a multimedia thing. And that was starting to go well, and we had an SSL desk, and I did about 50 albums there.
Wow.
Maybe I didn't. I know I've done over 100 albums of arranging, like having a singer-songwriter coming in, and I've arranged a track. I've counted them. I've lost count. I keep remembering things that I forgot I did. And they're all, and what's funny is I still can't play properly. I just think that's incredible.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I can't play the guitar. Properly? I can only play 8 bars of guitar. Like, I can now. First of all, if I want a really good solo, I have to get someone in. But I can do most indie guitars and stuff myself. Like, I did all the guitars on your album.
Yes.
But I can only play 8 bars. I have to really learn it, and then I have to hit record.
Yeah, the second album. Yeah, that's what I think I did the guitar in the first one, and then the second album, which I'm currently in the process.
Mostly the electrics I was talking about.
Oh, the electrics. All the electrics. And the backing vocals. Yeah. I loved all the backing vocals.
Yeah, well, the electrics are, they're not that difficult to play, and I layered them all up to make them sound like one guitar.
Yeah.
But I can't remember them then after that. So if you said, will you come on tour and play the guitar, I'd be like, oh God, I have to learn all these now.
Oh yeah, because the way you play is to play for that loop that you want to get.
Yeah, so now I can play piano quite well, and I can play rhythm acoustic.
Yeah.
Because that's how I write all my songs. So be a good piano player, I can play that live, and I can play acoustic live now.
Yes.
But I'm not as good as a piano player as I'd like to be.
Of course.
I should be. I'm playing 30 years. I should be right up there, and I'm sort of about here,
Yeah.
So I'm practicing a lot now to try and get up there, because I feel like it's something. It's on my bucket list.
Yeah.
Something I need to finish.
Of course.
Yeah. So that was those periods of time, and that's where I produced loads and loads of records, just tons of them.
Wow.
I can't, it's just crazy.
So obviously through that, you've ended up here now. And
and along that way, the artists didn't have a clue how to promote themselves.
Yes.
So because I'd done all that self-promotion and all, and filling gigs and all, I just started doing all that for people as well.
Yes.
Showing them how to do it. So that was all accidental. And then the whole lot ended up, I took a break from about 2014. And then I came out with this new idea in 2017. I've been kind of trying to push that ever since.
Yeah.
And that's doing the things we talked about.
Okay. Yeah, so with, just in terms of the promotion of music, the thing that I found, like, I really appreciated getting your insight in the beginning, just in terms of how we can use, like, let's say, advertising and money into ads to grow your social medias and to, you know, grow your audience in a way. And you had loads of good stuff for me. And then I feel, so my first, like, foray, let's say, into marketing, like that year where I was kind of like first time in music, I was like, yeah, I'm going to do all this stuff. And as I started doing it, I found for me personally that I just felt I was just posting because I was for the sake of posting. Yeah. And then also I was doing it in like, it felt very disingenuous to who I was. Yeah. Like, for example, when I see YouTube thumbnails and I see people going like they're making this shocked face because they know if you add a face to the thumbnail, it does better for the algorithm. Yeah, yeah. But my integrity as a person, I'd just be so embarrassed. And there's stuff that I am embarrassed about now. So what I'm trying to get to is a place where I'm not. I want to look back and not be embarrassed about what I'm doing. So I think performative videos where I'm trying to sing and play, but not like, I don't know. There's just, you've probably seen it, but there's just so much. I feel fakeness in music, like marketing, like where it's all this pretend stuff and people just like, you know, sucking themselves off basically in terms of how they view themselves and like because it's very prone to ego, like we just suggested, because music is very individual and it's hard to, and especially if you're having success. Yeah. If you had success, right? This is the scary bit. If I had success, right, imagine I got loads of views and audience from doing a little dance. Yeah. I'd be dancing now. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's all I'd be doing. Yeah. And you see some creators that they find a thing and then that's all they become because it's a self-repeating pattern and they think that's because, and in a way, yes, that's what the people want from you. Yeah. But is that what you want from yourself? And I find that so difficult to deal with.
Yeah, so I suppose there's three kind of people I meet. Yes. So there's the artist that wants to be successful but doesn't want to do anything, and there's a lot of them. Or they want to get there quick, and there's a lot of them. And I have made a decision now that I don't work with them anymore. Yeah, because it's too difficult. And you know, then there's the artist that's probably like you or me, that we just want to do things our own way at our own pace and at our own time, and we're not sort of bought into like. How, you know, I could put a record out tomorrow and use ads and stuff, and I've been doing it for my brother, and I could do that and I could see what would happen, but I'm just not ready at the moment to do that. I don't want to do it, so I don't feel the need to do it. So I've been around the block with it all, and I'm doing what I want to do, so I don't need to do it. But there's the few people I've had, and in recent times it's proven to work again. Like I've had 2 or 3 guys I'm working with, and I've watched them sell out shows using this stuff, and I've watched them. Like one guy's Instagram is growing now by 100 people a week. Wow. Yeah, and so I see this now. The other thing is, when I met you, here's the thing about AI: you could meet me 2 years ago, you could come to me again, and I've rejigged everything. Yeah, because it's so fast. Everything's moving. The change is so quick. So there's a kind of a new system that I know on certain things, but then it depends on what platforms you're working on. So I haven't even looked at TikTok yet. Yeah. I mean, I'm still busy with kind of Instagram is the thing, and YouTube is what I've been looking at most recently. And
so what's the basic, like, without giving away too much, I guess?
Well, it's pretty easy.
With the Instagram stuff.
You have to, so I agree with the integrity thing. So I spend a lot of time researching artists who are successful that you don't know who they are. And there's loads of them. And the thing is, when you search for them, then the algorithm gives you more. So I'm now at the point where I just get inundated with new artists.
Yeah, your feed is just like your research, basically.
They just come up all the time. And so there's Irish guys, and I'm doing a talk in Imro now as well, once a month, you know. And when I say to people, have you heard of Robert Grace or have you heard of Isaac Butler? Most of them, some of them have heard of Isaac Butler now recently, but most of them go, no. And Robert Grace is an Irish artist with millions of followers on TikTok, selling out gigs. Loads of places, and he uses ads because I took a picture. There was the number one There's a girl called, what's her name? Kenya Grace.
Oh, yeah.
She's that song, Strangers. I'm pretty sure she put that out by herself.
Yeah.
And it definitely, I've seen her run ads to build an email list. So the two things is, one is get good with ads. They're not very difficult. And since I met you, I've simplified it. Yeah. The second thing is, so I saw this American company who do music production or music marketing. They're quite good at it. And they said there is one way that triggers all the algorithms, and you should build a fan base if you do it on Instagram. And it's put out a song every month. It has to be good. This is the key thing, which I'll get to. And then you've got to do 20 pieces of content, the same 30 seconds of the song, which you have to feed drip to the organic. And then you've got to do all these other videos. But the thing is, you could do them like old school. So you could do them, it's about the music. You know, you don't have to do the little dance or the you know. So I have a guy, the guy whose tracks are doing really well. What he does is he's kind of Celtic Irish, but with pop. And he just happened to have these two wolfhounds. And what happens is the market like his wolfhounds and him in a picture singing a song. So he just keeps putting this stuff out with these wolfhounds. Brilliant. And someone said, I remember doing a talk, and we had him doing the talk actually. I'm going to have him do another one. And
who is he?
Owen Kenny's his name.
Owen Kenny.
Yeah, you might, like Adam knows him and stuff, but like, and someone said, oh, well, you're not selling out doing that. And he said, no, but that's the lifestyle.
Yeah. And they're his dogs.
Yeah, but Duran, you can't listen to Duran without going, I also need to dress up in the suits and wear the makeup and have the Playboy.
It's okay if that's the authentic version of it.
That's the thing. Yeah. If it's so. So I think, so the thing is, this works, and there are loads of ways you can do it the inauthentic way, but you can find a way, which I prefer, to do it. Like, I mean, Isaac Butler, I think he does it for, there's some stuff but he did a lot of authentic stuff, and then he just focuses on the songs.
Yeah.
You know,
some of it might be like they are being authentic, but it rubs, let's say, me. I have a bias, so it rubs me up the wrong way.
Yeah,
I might think they're doing something that they're not actually doing. Yeah. Because so I can project, which I'm not like saying I don't as well. Yeah. But I am coming at it from my point of view, as we all are. Yeah. But anyway,
well, I'm not a big fan of pretending that you've gone up to someone in the street and say, hey, what are you listening to? Will I play a song? You know, I'm not into that.
Or like, we just came up with this riff after you seeing like, Boombox, come the Boombox. Whoa.
This is how we do it. And then there's your record.
Caught in the act, like, or my sister walks in as I'm about to sing this song, she starts singing with me.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
I hate that so much.
No, I'm not into that. But like, I mean, like, for example, you could just do videos of you singing the song.
Yeah.
And I think if the song now, so here's the thing, I think ads, and the reason ads work is because they allow you to bypass the blocks that platforms might be putting on you. So that's why they work.
Yeah,
in a simple thing.
You can
you've a bit of control. You've a bit of control. Yeah. The organic works is then the organic it assists the organic in taking off as well. And then the organic has rules. If you're doing the things that do the rules and you can manage to be authentic doing that, that'll help. But I think one key thing is if the song and the artist aren't right, it won't work.
Yes.
So you have to accept that. So you have to go, either I need to get better or I'm happy doing what I'm doing. Now, I don't work with people anymore that I think, like if I meet someone and I don't think they're ready for this, and I've worked with a lot of artists, so I'd kind of have a good idea, I'd say, you're not ready, go and work on your songs. So if I said to you, Basil, let's do this, that because I know that your stuff is good, and that's true experience, and just watching how people interact with you and stuff. So that's what I think is the answer.
Yes, I think when it comes down to like good, you need to start with something good. It's like a recipe. Like for ingredients, if they're not good, then it's going to be very difficult to get a good result. And you don't want to be kidding yourself either, because it's not about see, this is a problem I got into. I think in the very beginning. When I wrote a song and I released a song, because not many people I know in my circle, let's say, have released a song or done a song. Yeah. And so I had this, so I'll tie this in with, I'm a software engineer as well, right?
Yeah.
And so non-technical people treat me as if like, oh, he knows, he's a smart lad, like sure he does all that computer stuff, right? But I know what I'm like. I get to witness my own stupidity and everything else. But we give this air sometimes to people that like I give it to you. You're doing the music production stuff, and I'm just like, what is going on? Like, so we have a capacity to be like, we treat people with certain things, but we can believe that ourselves. So when I released my first song, I was like, I wrote a song. Everyone should just be listening to this because no one's ever done this, and like, it gives you this air of kind of superiority in a way. Like you can, just like what's it like the smell of your own whatever. I don't want to get too into it. But what you have to realize then, it's like that was just one step, and there's more songs, and there has to be more. There has to be more. And why are you doing it? Was it just for one song to be like, and then that's it? I'm gonna finish. Like versus. Why you have to ask yourself why you're doing something, and it's okay to want to be successful because there's people that are working terrible jobs they don't want to be in, and wouldn't it be great if they were successful doing something that they love? So I'm not anti-success. I actually, if people find success doing the dance, we're all doing the dance. You know what I mean? In some form, like to pay our taxes and all. So, but the point is that don't just think it's one and done.
Well, I mean, for me, like I play music every day. Most days, now I didn't for a long time, but I have been because it's like a vocation, and it's not about whether I'm good or not anymore. It's about there's a song, I put it together, I assemble it in the production thing, and then now I'm even trying to go out and play live with a couple of difficulties that we mentioned already, just like things with your voice going wrong when you've a horse or a flu or something, and but I'm not doing it. I'm just doing it.
Yeah,
I'm doing it as an internal development.
Vocation
program.
is a very, very good word. Actually, it's a very powerful word. Like you're doing it. Rick Rubin has this book. It's like the creative act, but he gives like a cosmic significance to art in a way. So even as we're making art, we're actually iterating on all the art that's come before us. Like we wouldn't know to write a pop song if we didn't live here and now. So and then by contributing back. In our little tiny ripples, we're actually helping the evolution of art, and I think it's very. When we get to the end of our lives, we can say, "I contributed in that dance."
Yeah,
and I think that's always very powerful. And a vocation is a very good way of saying it because then it's just like, what am I going to fill my time with that's going to be meaningful? Yeah, and that coming at it from that perspective, it just takes all the pressure off.
Yeah, well, a very interesting thing for me is I went to those songwriting nights and I happened to play. I don't play it that often, a song called Stay, because it's quite low in my register. And I kind of feel, anyone could sing this, And but it's a good little tune. And it's kind of, what's interesting about it is I wrote it about all the people that I was meeting, all the colourful different types of people I was meeting on Camden Street when I was living there. And it was like my Penny Lane or Strawberry Fields type, or Lucy in the Sky with. And then I also took some references because it's funny in the song. There was a girl I met called Lucy, and I said in the have the lyrics in you met Lucy, and then she fell out of the sky, and that was so Lucy is actually one of the characters, and that described her in a nutshell for me. But the fall out of the sky was because Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds is a Beatles sort of lyric. So that was the point, and and I played it at the songwriting nights, and everybody thinks it's a great song. And I'm just like, okay. But I'm glad they do, because a lot of thought went into those lyrics.
Yes.
But they sound very simple.
Yeah. Well, simple is like difficult.
Yeah.
That's what people don't understand, I think. Yeah. Or well, maybe they do understand. Like the Beatles, the language we use doesn't have to be revolutionary or super intellectual. It actually should. If it's a simpler, the better, if anything.
But it's amazing how people don't notice. Like I wrote another song and I wanted it to sound a bit like Buddy Holly. And so the verses are like that, and but I wanted it to be modern and sound a bit like the Kings of Leon at the time. So the two production elements are there, and hardly anyone ever notices. But one person did say that the verses are very 50s there, aren't they? And I said, yeah, and they sound a bit cheesy until you actually know why I did it.
Yes.
And then there's another thing I love is having two messages in the song, two meanings. So a meaning that's obvious that people might pick up on, but then the real meaning behind the song. Yes. Yeah. So I love doing that as well.
Yeah, that's that's kind of the artistry. We always leave little stamps of ourselves, like even that little nod to the Beatles song in your lyrics.
Yeah.
Like I've certain nods to certain songs.
Yeah.
Like you'd reform words that you've heard.
Yeah.
Like me's from like Dark Side of the Moon. I have some little nods to that, and because that's just our stamp. Or I reference songs. Like I know that I've used this term in this song. And if I'm using it in a different way in this song, because I like connecting songs. If I write songs, let's say that I wrote them in close proximity to each other, like I'll notice, I'll connect them. I look for a connection. I'll be like, oh yeah, that was that period of time in my life.
Yeah.
And I think there's something very powerful. And also just on genres, because it's very interesting. Like when we listen to music and we say, oh, that's a classical song, that's a reggae song, that's a genres are like a stereotype of a song. Like there's certain elements, like the reggae beat, like the like that, the reggaeton like beat would make that. Then that's what makes you think a reggae song is a reggae. Or I can't really think of any other examples off the top of my head now. Well, but like let's say 50s, that that kind of guitar. Like that was there's certain, what is it like? There's certain musical elements that make the genre, and if you just add them elements, then it's in that genre.
Well, like they've guitar simulators that simulate the early Beatles guitar sounds, which happened by accident. They're actually kind of bad recording mistakes. Do you know what I mean? They're like not miking things up properly. They're like guitarists not been able to tune properly.
Yeah.
There's a particular make of guitar that I think has an intonation problem, which means it sounds slightly out of tune with itself, even when it's in tune, because the overtones go slightly out of key because the neck is too short.
Yeah.
And I think the Beatles might have played one of those guitars, and that's why those guitars always sounded slightly very slightly out of key.
Yes.
And but that's just because it's old, and that's where they were at. You know, but now we want it. That became a sound, or like every single effect is a mistake. Like flangers are like and phasing are all distortion, all flawed, all problems. Distortion. That's what everyone was trying to get rid of until some guy said, "No, wow, this is cool." Yeah, but it was they were all like technically wrong.
Yeah,
you know, so all our effects except for reverb, I think, and delay, but all our kind of modulation effects and distortions are all. And saturation are all using equipment incorrectly.
Yes.
You know?
A lot of stuff comes out of that. Like they hear something and then someone didn't intend it to be in that way.
Yeah.
And it's like Chinese whispers. It just kind of passes on. And then someone's just... Like the first drum machines, like some of them were just used by organists. And then someone used it in one of their songs. And now everyone's like, oh, drum machines, they could be a cool sound.
Yeah. But did you ever hear the song Da Da Da? The Da Da Da. By who was it by? It was number one.
Sounds like you're taking it.
No, go and look it up. It was number one.
How do you spell it?
Da Da Da. Da Da. It'll come up. And it's
by Trio.
Trio. That's it. Yeah, it was. And they used the Casio PT1, which was the cheapest Casio, and it goes boopy doopy.
Okay.
Boopy doopy.
Do I know this song? I can't fucking play it.
It goes.
Oh, we're going to get now.
Get it.
But Trio, Da Da Da. You're saying
they used the Casio PT1. That's it there.
It's like the metronome.
That's the thing. It's you. That's the beef from Casio. That's Casio's PT1. That's its drum.
That's hilarious. It sounds like a metronome.
That was number one.
Do you know what? I've heard loads of songs like this. Like the Gorillaz have that. Like I'm happy.
Yeah.
And that was just a preset on something.
Yeah.
But that's just how art can emerge.
And that Back in Black album. There's one song on it. It's four sounds on a pad. You know the way they make pads with weird sounds.
Yeah.
And it's it just go because Mark Ronson's he shows in the masterclass from BBC masterclass. He just does it's just four pads. He just goes or whatever it is. And it's on the album. So yeah, there's loads of stuff like that.
Yeah, it can just come out in from weird places, and it just sticks. Like if this is the thing, right? As an artist, if you're moving through the world, and if a song hit you in the face, you take it, and you think that was like a divine intervention.
Funny enough, I had a very strange experience.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I woke up only about 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, and I was dreaming this has never happened, but this was amazing. I was dreaming that I was playing piano like I was with a band like the Beatles, and I was in the middle with the grand piano playing. It was a huge crowd, and there was the melody going and the chords going, and I literally woke up with that melody in my head and the chords, and I got up out of bed and I got straight up and I actually captured those 4 chords and that chorus. And I have them now.
Just from sleep?
From a dream.
Okay.
It never happened before.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and I've got the whole melody. It's kind of rough. It doesn't sound quite right because I couldn't remember it exactly. I'll have to, but it's pretty close, you know. And I have the chords. I couldn't believe it that I actually got from a dream.
Yeah, I've had a few songs come from a dream melody. But sometimes I'll wake up and there'll be a melody in my head and I don't even know why. I wasn't even in the band. Yeah. And then I'll think, is it good enough to record or not? Because I don't want to disrupt my sleep. Yeah. But that happens to me a lot. And sometimes I've woken up. I actually had a dream that I was sitting in a room talking to the Beatles and I was annoying them with loads of questions and they had no time for me, like, you know what I mean? Because they were just like, come on, like, you're annoying me. You're annoying, like, Paul McCartney now.
But I was in a band. It wasn't called the Beatles, but it was the Beatles in this dream world.
Yeah.
It was, and I was the guy playing the piano. And I know how the song should sound. That's like, hilarious. I've the whole production in my head still. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so when I get around to doing it, I'll tell you what one it is. But yeah, that was really bizarre experience.
Yeah, so I want to just get... we still have loads of time. Yeah, like we have another hour probably. But with the production side of things, and just your sort of the methodology you've developed. So imagine a singer-songwriter comes to you and says, "I have a song, and I want to record it, and I want you to produce it." Yeah, like from as best as you can, because I know your brain, like it's like mine. It jumps around. Yeah, but how does that go from like point A to point B for you?
Okay, so it depends. So if it's professional. So that means I'm getting paid to do something versus personal. So there's slightly different processes. So I suppose but you know, a normal singer-songwriter could take from both sides. But the professional would be, so the first thing is I eventually got a selection of tracks that I did. Because one problem I had for years was someone would say, I'd say, what do you want to sound like? And they go, I want to sound like Coldplay and this, and I want to do that and this, I want that reverb. And so I'd go and I'd try and do all of that. And I'd be working with crap gear. And then they go, yeah, it's okay, it's not very big, is it? And I realised I'm trying to tell people, they're getting an expectation in their head that's not realistic. So I went, how do I solve this problem? So the setup I have now is worth about, you could buy it for about 10 grand. Probably less now, 5. So it's a $5,000 setup maybe, and what I've done loads of tracks on it that have been released and that you could release. Plus, then I've done some tracks which have really good arrangements in real world. So I've taken those and I've put them on a SoundCloud. But the first thing I do is when someone comes to me, I say, listen to my stuff, because if you don't like that, you're not going to like what I do. Because one of the things I discovered was if I'm produce someone, I cannot produce like them.
Of course,
I can only produce like me.
Yes.
That's a huge thing to discover, because I used to work with my brother and do lots of records, and he'd be trying to guide me as a producer, and I'd be just getting lost with his way because he didn't like to plan ahead. He didn't do anything I did. He'd go, I'm doing this thing now, like he'd be on the guitar, I'm doing this thing now and I'm not leaving it, and I'd be just like, okay, but for me that's a problem because I don't know what space you would need for the bass, and so my mind couldn't think the way he was. And then he'd hop over to the piano and I'd be just lost.
Yeah.
And eventually, and we used to get into arguments. So eventually I used to go, tell you what, you give me what you want from the song, and then I'm going to put my part on it, and we're not going to speak. And that's what we did. Yeah. And we've done that ever since.
Yes.
When I'm working, and we come up with great stuff. Now what he's doing is he's doing his arrangements and he sends them to me to mix. He doesn't tell me what to do. He doesn't say he wants it to sound like that. Now, we're very lucky.
Yes, like, of course. He's developed that over time.
Yeah. And what that does is, because I've learned that songwriting and producing is a team. Like, even with me, like, I'm only doing it all myself because I can't afford to pay all the people. If I could, I wouldn't.
Yes.
And a lot of these famous people, they go look at their records. You think they've written them. There's 3 or 4 people involved in them all.
Even all the latest Grammys. Yeah. Like Sabrina Carpenter, got some great songs. Chaperone.
Yeah.
And I'm not taking anything away from them, but these songs, they're an enterprise. Like, there's so many
it's not
people
all
on
their
them.
stuff. And I bet you can look at loads of artists, and you can probably look at loads of artists where they say the songwriter is great, isn't it?
Yeah.
But then you go and look at the album, there's other people contributing to the song.
Yeah.
And have songwriting
They have
credits.
a label behind them.
Yeah, and so like that's a huge like you have to not fool yourself into thinking I can just do that all on my own. No. What I can do is I maybe can do an album and make one song become super successful and get in the door of the big players, but then I'm gonna need to use them to broaden my scope.
Of course.
Do you know what I mean? And to do more things.
Yes.
And to get more. There's own like. Now I could stay the way I am and keep writing songs the way I do, but like there is another level.
Of course.
But you have to be in that level to be doing that other level.
Yeah. So you're gonna do what you can do at your level.
Yeah, and so the first thing is, so anyway, getting back to that, so once they say that, then I start to decipher, right, what do they like?
Yes.
So I have to go, and now I've learned describing things, because I used to get people saying, and yeah, I wanted to be kind of hot and warm and red and a bit orange in that colour, and then if you could do a kind of scratchy sound here, and then the cymbals need to be really bright and fizzy.
Crispy, crispy.
Yeah. and then if you could get the thing to do the thing of the thing, and I'd be like square-eyed looking at them.
Yeah.
And I learned, and then I discovered that lots of people who are famous, I was discovering things that people who were famous producers already knew. And I went, oh yeah, references. Yeah, that's a good idea. So now I go, do you like Blur? Yeah. Do you like Big House and Country? Yeah. Play that. What do you think of those drums? Yeah. Now I know what it sounds like.
Yes.
I don't have to guess. I don't have to go, well, it's a crispy kind of punchy, funky kind of red, purpley drum sound.
So references would just be a collection of songs that the person
with the
would
sounds,
with the sounds that the person likes.
And then the style. So once I have that, and I kind of get a groundwork. I think I did this with you on a couple of songs. I kind of get a groundwork for 5 or 6 tracks.
Yeah.
And then I kind of go, okay, this instrument, let's listen to what did they do. And I remember one song I was listening to with you, and I kind of felt like there was this kind of in excess kind of piano vibe I could put in. And I kind of copied that in a few songs to give your first album kind of sound. And so then when I have those references, then the next thing is you give me the track.
Yes.
And
so just on the references, as an artist, what songs do you love, and what songs would you love to make songs like of that style? So, but I can't try to pick songs that you actually like as well. Don't just pick songs personally in the style to be like, oh. And even if you don't know why you love the song, like that NXS song, like what was it, Mystify? Like, and then that triggered something in you. But because if you start from that place of I love this song.
Well, there's a Blur guitar sound to a couple of your songs.
Yeah.
Ocean has it, and so does Life is a Dog. I think.
Yes.
And I got that from Blur. Like
yes. But you also take your own interpretation. Like you'll listen to the song, and because I've worked with you and seen you producing, but as you're moving through, you'll just be like, I'm hearing this, and you won't even say anything, and you just open up YouTube, and you're like, listen to them drums, see the way there's a gap in the drums, and you're like, all right, I'm gonna use that, and then you're hearing stuff, and so it's all about you've a great library for sound. I think.
So that comes from listening to loads and loads of people's songs and doing loads of productions, and I suppose that's something you can't get fast.
No,
that takes time.
You just have to listen.
But what you can get fast is. So once I've established, so what I'll do is I kind of listen to you. So I'm trying to think now, like with Ocean, there was 2 songs of yours. One I heard when you were playing, I could hear little melodies. You were only playing chords, but I could hear a melody that was coming. There was one string that there was a melody coming off it. I mean, I'm going to enhance that by I'm going to get the strings to play that and the brass to play that and this to play that, and that's going to suddenly pop out, and you're going to go, where did that come from? I'm going to go, you play it.
Yes.
But it's so subtle in your guitar playing, you can't hear it. So that was one thing. Then I pick up a lot of other parts from your melody. You might notice that some things are following your melodies.
Yeah.
And I'm layering them then with harmonies.
You can take a certain part of the melody and then like you can loop it.
That's poetry, you know. Mm-hmm. You know, you go
all that stuff.
Yeah, so you sing a line and then I do an
answer. Call and
response.
Response.
With the strings.
Yes. But so you can listen to the melody, the vocal, and then you can take parts of that, and then you can repeat them in different ways.
Yeah, and then I can change the tail end on a different instrument, and all of this stuff. Yes. The other thing is, I usually try to make sure I've only got 4 or 5 melodies in hooks.
Yeah.
So I don't. You might think I have 10 or 20, but I don't. I have 4 or 5, and then they've harmonies on the melodies.
Yes.
Yeah. So it sounds like there's loads going on, but because the ear can only pick up 5 or 6 things at a time. So I learned that. And I also learned that chucking the kitchen sink in, which I would do at the start. I used to do that a lot. I do it less now. But once I've chucked the kitchen sink in, I pair it all back.
Yes.
And I play. So let's say I have something going all the way through the song, and you've even come back to me, and which is something else that happens to the artist, and paired it back even more.
Yeah.
And why that's really good is because you get less in the song, but you have different things happening at different spots, and it makes the song really interesting. But why less is more is because when you fill up all the space, you make the song small.
Yes.
So you be very careful with that.
Exactly. And we can only, there's no point in this, like let's say I have one melody. Let's just chuck in like 4 more melodies. Then it's just a noise.
Yeah.
Eventually, imagine if you do it in the extreme, it just becomes white noise, like.
Yeah.
So that's what it'd be like if you went all the way with that. So you have to kind of pick your battles, pick your moments, and don't worry. I think another thing is like you can have special moments in a song, and they don't have to be for the full song.
Yeah.
They can just be like a moment, or whatever.
Yeah, and So just to go then then I pick.
So we're getting with the reference tracks. We're getting ideas.
Yeah.
Then you're looking at the melody. You're getting ideas, and then you're also looking at if I'm playing guitar.
Yeah.
One thing you've done is like the basic beat for the drums.
It comes off the guitar rhythm.
Yes. So
you've dictated that.
Yes.
So the songwriter always dictates the rhythm section.
Yes.
So then my first go-to. So usually what I'll do if I need to do something.
So for
fast,
a songwriter needs to come to you like the ideal scenario is like their vocal.
And their guitar chords.
And the guitar.
Yeah,
the guitar,
or piano.
Or piano.
Yeah,
either so you can interpret a rhythm.
So, because the whole song is in those 3 things.
Yes.
Like the chords are in it, the playing is in it, the rhythm is in it, and the vocal and the melody is in it. So, everything is in that. So, I record that first, and then I go, right. And then I literally have practiced. I will then set up a drum kit. Now, if I want to be really fast, I have a set of drums that I learned this from, I think it was Mike Stent, is that the guy's name? Oh, it was one of them anyway. Someone told me that he said he used the same snare sound on every single band that he recorded. Like totally different bands.
Do that.
So I went, okay, really fast way to do things is have a drum kit that you use all the time and have a mixture of electronic and main sounds. And, you don't
need 10,000 kick samples.
No, so I have that go-to.
Yeah.
And then I put everything down with that first. And then I literally play in live. Yeah. And that's taken practice. Yeah, but I've had to practice from. I played drums for a long time.
Yeah.
I'm not the best drummer in the world, but I can play kind of.
He plays drums at the piano.
Yeah, but I used to play with sticks. Yeah. But now what I do to be really particular is I'll play the kick in first with the guitar.
Yeah.
And I'll stop it where I want it to stop. Sorry, I just knocked off that hole. We're having a pop. And then I'll do the snares separately.
Yeah.
And then I'll do the fill-ins on the snares separately.
Okay.
And then I'll do the toms around the fill-ins and any others. And then I do the hi-hat. And I do them all separately. And I stop them and start them where I feel they need to be stopped. Now, that takes a bit of practice.
Yeah.
But then you get this kit that's electronic, but it sounds a bit live. And you've kind of heard what that sounds like.
So with the drum program, the process I was seeing just described is... So, like, imagine you're playing, your song is playing, and as the song is playing, he's playing in the kick.
Yeah.
And where the kick should be for the whole song, basically.
Yeah, it was straight through.
The whole way through, not just like a little loop.
No.
And then adds the snare, and then the fills. He'll just be sitting there and just go...
Yeah, but there's some...
No, I know there's like...
Yeah, but I have a repertoire of fills, like there's fills that work on the 8 beats, 16 beats, 32 beats.
Now, you know what? You just have a very quick way of moving through it, though.
Yeah, but it's just by going, oh, well, this is 4/4, right, and slow, so the fill at Tom is going to go 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
See? or eights. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then I can go 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8 and leave 2 out. See what I mean? And so, and why I do it that way is because the quantizes them all perfectly.
Yes.
So, now, this is for fast stuff.
Yes.
I'm not saying this isn't for everything. This is for, you've been given a track you need to do. It's a pop track. You need
have
to
a
get
certain
it out.
budget, like
There's a certain
you can't
budget.
be spending all day.
Yeah, and so that's the first thing. Then the bass, I'll decide 2 things. I'll decide, is there going to be a strong melody from the bass? I think in most of your songs I kind of went, no. The bass is supporting.
Yeah.
So then I don't play a lot on the bass. It tends to just do root
simple,
notes.
like root notes of the chord.
If I have a song where I decide the bass is prominent, well then I need to practice that riff a bit, and that's going to be one of my melodies.
Yeah, so if you think of a song like Billie Jean, the bass is the song.
Yeah, so
that'd be like a very melodic bass.
Yeah, so I'd have to practice that a bit. That'd take me a bit longer, and I'd have made that decision.
Yes.
That I was going to try.
But most bass is supporting in pop music, let's say.
Yeah, but there's some there's some.
Obviously, there's some exceptions.
Well, like another one bites the dust, diddle doom.
Yeah, of course. But that's when the bass is the song.
Is the song.
You know what I mean? Yeah. But other than that, it's just kind of, it doesn't need to be, because if you add too much movement in the bass, like you're saying, it distracts from everything and it creates too much. Yeah. I had that problem, I think, with my own stuff where I was like, trying to be cool with the bass. Now I keep it very simple.
Yeah, so it depends. Like, if you want to be cool with the bass, that's by and large, it's.
But if you want to just be like, if you want to just add bass to something, just play the root notes of the chord you're playing in a particular rhythm, and that'll get you a good bit of the value.
Well, usually the simple thing is have the kick drum and the bass playing the same pattern, more or less. You know, like. And that usually works. Yeah. I also make sure as I'm recording these things down, they never go above 0 dB. So the kick drum I keep at 0, everything at 0 dB. I keep all the levels set as I'm arranging now. I used to do that, but I do it now because it gives loads of headroom, makes the track bigger. Yeah.
So we'll get just on the kick and the bass then, because those frequencies can like overlap and distort and go crazy. Like what kind of strategies have you developed for?
So the simplest one is I leave the kick alone. And I put like I have 2 kicks. I have a kick with a clicky thing in it to give treble, and I layer it with a sample with a subharmonic. Yeah. So I've got a huge range of bass frequency there. Yeah. And I usually just duck out about 120 dB
in the where the kick is in the bass.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I enhance that on the bass sound. Yes. And then I move the bass down. I actually clear out everything up to about 70 hertz. And then I poke 70 hertz on the kick. And like that's
so. Just because like we're talking about EQ, right? Now, this is so. I'll try to give a very quick overview. So imagine the human ear can hear from, like, let's just call it 0 to 20,000, right? And we're talking about instruments filling different parts of that frequency spectrum. So imagine this is low, so this is closer towards 0, and this is high, so this is closer towards the top. Yeah. And so the kick and the bass happen in the lower part of the frequency range. Just keeping it simple. We can go technical, but I'll give that little bit of an overview.
Okay, so what I do with the kick drum is the kick drum stays right down mostly at the bottom. Yes. With a little, each instrument has a fundamental frequency in it. It's the strongest frequency of the instrument.
So if you were looking at the EQ, every time the kick hits, like boom, 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 it would peak.
There'd be one
somewhere on that spectrum. It will peak at a certain point, and that's the fundamental frequency.
Yeah, so I'll make sure there's loads of different ways to do it, but I make sure that I poke that up a little bit, and then I cut it where the bass peaks through, and it's fundamental. So that's one way to carve out space. There's another way with these plugins like Smooth and things.
Oh yes,
they're a bit
Soothe.
Soothe, Soothe. Yeah. And then there's a Fab Filter.
Yes,
that does it as well.
The new Fab Filter looks cool.
Yeah. So
it does it. So this like that thing that Soothe does is like, so when the kick plays, Soothe will analyze the kick's frequencies and then look at the bass and remove the frequencies that the kick is playing at from the bass in a way. Yeah.
It kind of locks them in like a jigsaw like that. Yeah. But the thing is, I found it always are effective.
Yeah, exactly. There's many ways to skin a cat.
So, I mean, if I was to go and learn those ways, I have to take some time out to learn the plugin and all of that stuff. So, I can't do that when I'm under pressure. So, I have this go-to, and this is the go-to system. It's very old school. It's from the 80s or the 90s, and they still use it.
But I just want to say, whatever system works for you is what works. That's another thing. There's no right way. If you look at loads of music producers on YouTube, they all do things in a mad way, and like that, you think that's a bit counterproductive. Yeah. But for them, it works. So.
Yeah, well, so because I'll get to a reason why it does. So so then I usually pick the rhythmic instruments, and I'll do them next, and they're usually just playing chords.
Yes. And what do you mean by rhythmic instruments?
So rhythm acoustic, rhythm electrics, a piano playing a rhythm. Pad sounds.
How do you think about because we talked about melody, or like you don't want too many melodies, and like do you think with rhythm, like is it just one rhythm or is there many rhythms? How do you think about rhythm?
Well, I mean there's if you can use different instruments to get intricate rhythms. So like if we take one of your songs, like I've a really straight beat. Rhythm's really interesting because I have a really straight beat on Life is a Dog, but the kick is like and then the where I get the interesting part is with the guitars that go bam 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 bam, and they become part of the percussive track.
Yes,
and they blend together and they sound like a sound. And like the songs that one of the songs that Blur do that in is Girls Who Like Boys.
Yeah,
it's the same. Yeah, it's the same kind of thing. And so so you can do slightly different rhythms on all these things and lock them together.
Yes. But they all have to be in with each other. Like they actually are all playing one technical.
Yeah, it's like one big instrument.
Yeah, but they all add
different
little bits.
Colours. Yeah.
Like imagine a drum kit with different instruments that aren't just drums.
Yeah, yeah. And then I move on to instruments that I go, oh, that sounds like ABBA. That's one of your songs. And you go, and I can hear a disco thing. And I can go, ABBA would have done something like, on a guitar there, and I go, I wonder, can I do something? And I'll start trying to look for something similar, and I'll go to an ABBA track and I'll listen to a guitar riff with the piano and go, I'm going to do something like that.
Yeah.
And then I'll play piano and guitar riff in your song at the end. And I have to there's a bit of there, I have to start finding things.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I kind of know what I'm looking for.
You have a direction.
Yeah,
you'll have to find the Rob MacLeod way of doing it.
Yeah, because otherwise I'd just sound like ABBA.
Yeah.
So that takes a little bit of time. It usually doesn't take that long.
So is this after we've added
This
rhythm?
is after all the pads. And the rhythm, the core instruments I call.
So we've added rhythm, and then pads are just like, how would you describe pads?
Well, they're just like they were meant to mimic strings, but they kind of got botchy and sound kind of spacey.
So everyone understands violin. So imagine you had a room full of violins.
That's called a string pad.
Yeah, a pad is like it fills it up.
It's just meant to be a ton of instruments playing the same chords.
Yes.
And it used to be strings.
Without too much craziness.
It was padding for the song. But when keyboards came in, they started making these. They were trying to mimic these, but they sounded kind of spacey.
Yeah.
So pads from keyboards can sound either spacey or stringy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's loads of songs with them in it, and so
of course.
They're really handy things to do.
Yeah.
And they give a nice colour because you can change the sound without really playing very much.
Yes.
So you can keep flicking through and go, oh, that one sounds good. So I can put a pad, play all the chords, and then I can just keep changing the pad sound as the chord is playing, as the song is playing, till one goes boom, and I go, oh, that's different, and then that's in.
Yeah.
And now you have this tone that is.
Yeah. So you just imagine just playing in the chords like bam. Whatever the chords are, just basically simple, straight.
Now, there's another thing. Another thing I've started to do. If the bass is playing down here, when I play the piano, I don't play in this octave if I can help it. Unless there's a very specific reason. I play here.
Yes.
And then I'll move the pad to here.
Yes.
And then I'll play the strings up here. And the reason for that is it keeps all the frequencies apart from each other.
This is a very important concept. And I've heard it described as vertical arrangement. So, like... George Harrison had this, or not George Harrison. Who was your man who did the Beatles? George
Martin.
George Martin, right? So he came up with the wall of sound.
Yeah.
So he'd have loads of instruments just playing. So we talked about that frequency spectrum. If you could fill that frequency spectrum up with different sounds, then it's like a wall of sound.
Yeah.
So what you're describing is, imagine on the piano, if every instrument, if you could fill the space of the piano, then it'd be like a wall of sound, and they're not getting in the way of each other.
No, because if you play them all on top of each other, what ends up happening because of masking,
yes,
is you tend to only hear one sound.
Yes.
You also tend to muddy up the mix.
Yes.
And you have this kind of muffly stuff.
Yeah.
And because all the muffly stuff kind of happens down
in
the bottom
end.
Region,
like,
yeah. Well, yeah. 200 or so. Yeah. So you have to be careful, you know?
Yeah.
And
there's more space, like you can fill up that vertical space much easier.
Yeah.
And then the mixing is easier.
Yeah, and then when I've done that and I've the supporting instruments, now I'll go, right, and they'll all be borrowed from different places. And then I'll go, right, now I'm going to look for the one unique thing. So in Rebel, it was the backing vocals. The kind of the kind of southern, pink and cotton vocals. With Taking Over the World, it was the brass.
Yes.
Yeah, with Nelson, it was the kind of
there's a few things.
There's a kind of it was a funny kind of weird sound. It made it sound,
and then the Terman.
That was I made that. I put that into every single song.
Yes,
and I made it a kind of a characteristic of your album. Yeah, which is another thing that all albums do, and it's very difficult not to do it nowadays.
Yeah,
because it just makes an album sound weird. Like so like in Sgt. Pepper's, there were loads of different kinds of songs going on. If you did that now, people wouldn't get the album.
Yeah.
Like what tends to happen now is we take, say, someone like Coldplay. If you go through their history, you'd see their first album was kind of indie sounding with guitars. Second album had more piano in it. Third album, can't remember, but then it became kind of this kind of pop kind of epic thing, and then it became dancey.
Yes.
Yeah, and then it
became all this dancey stuff. Each one of them had its like cohesiveness.
Yeah,
to it.
And now they can play all those songs at a gig.
Yeah,
and they all sound like they fit. But you couldn't have put Yellow on the album that's all the dance stuff. It would just sound really
Sky
strange.
Full of Stars and Yellow would be like, whoa.
Yeah, so I think that's something that you don't have. I mean, you can do whatever you want. Yeah. But I think for the sake of
it's like a thread line through the album that connects it in a way. I think the drum. If you use the same drums throughout it, that's another easy way. Yeah.
Well, all the core sounds in a person's album are the same, unless they make me change them. So all the drum sounds are the same for an album. All the bass sounds are usually the same, unless I play a live bass unless I change, unless I swap from electronic to live in the middle of an album for a particular reason.
Yeah,
the bass will be the same. The rhythm guitar sounds will probably be the same. The acoustic sounds will be the same. The vocal sound will be the same, unless there's a specific reason. The piano sound will be the same. The organ sound will be the same. The string sound will be the same. And the only things that will sound different are the unique instruments that aren't in other songs.
Okay.
And so that's kind of a process. And if I do that now, I can get a backing track done. I mean, I have done backing tracks in a day, like from nothing. And I mean, like big ones, like the ones on your records.
Yeah.
But it usually takes about 2 days to get the guts of it. Then you can see, then there's the mix, which probably takes another day.
Yes.
And then it depends on the artist. Like, so if the artist likes, he just goes, yeah, that's great. But if they go, no, I kind of need this, then it could take a bit longer. But I can get my part done in about 2 to anywhere between 1 and 3 days.
Yes.
And that's pretty fast.
Yeah, no, it's really fast.
And I have to do that with like song after song after song. Like, so at the minute I have 1, 2, 3, 4, about 6 songs floating about on the go at the moment. And yeah, they all have to be finished. But sure, your albums were done in stupid time.
Yeah. Like, the first one was hilarious.
The first one was like, and that turned out pretty good.
Yeah, I was really happy with that.
And so yeah, so that's there was something else I was going to say, but that's the producer version.
Yeah,
that's the commercial version.
Yeah, step by step, how to get a song in 2 days.
Yeah, and I use a method of mixing that's called desk mixing.
Yes.
I don't use lots of groups and subs, and a lot of people could say, now I am planning to switch over, but it means I have to take time out to learn it. But I have a system that works very fast for me, and I'm very quick at desk mixing.
Yeah.
So I don't use a lot of groups or anything. I tend to balance everything out.
Yes. So probably people have an idea when they look at those classic studio pictures. They'll see a big desk that someone's in front of just twiddling knobs,
and they don't know what it is.
So so imagine each channel. Imagine my voice now, right?
Yeah.
That I'm speaking, and Rob's voice now. I'm on one track and his voice is on the other track. So they'd be two slices of that big mixing desk, and you can adjust the volumes, the EQs, there's like compression in some of the cooler ones.
But each channel is the same.
Yeah, but yes.
So once you know one channel, you know them all.
Yes. So when you're mixing, so if you come at it, and then when you're talking about grouping, it's like in the digital world. Now you can probably group with.
They did have ways. You could group to 8 groups.
But imagine I take this track and Rob's track, and then I put that into one mega group, and now I can adjust the volume of like that mega group with one knob.
Yeah. So like, I mean, traditionally where that came from is say backing vocals and drums and string sections. But say I had a really good drum mix and I had all the drums really good. But then in the mix itself, I went, the drums are a bit low.
Yes.
I don't want to mess with the balance of the drums.
Yeah, because you've mixed the drums already.
Yeah, so what I do is I bus what's called bus, because it's like a bus going from one channel to the other on a route.
Yeah.
And
so that's why it's called a bus.
Yeah, so you get on the bus.
You get on the bus on the route.
And you route it to the stereo pair, and that is now your bus. That is now where your drums are centered, and then you can do overall stuff on that. So I can just turn up the level of that.
Yes,
and bring all the drums up, and suddenly they're louder, and they're still in good balance. I can do the same with the backing vocals. I can get a really good balance, send them to a stereo pair, and then I can just work with balancing these.
Yeah,
and they're the times I use groups and things like that.
So let's talk about, with the production of the track, we've kind of talked about how we end up with loads of different tracks that are serving loads of different purposes, and now we're coming to the mixing. So imagine we have a number of tracks now that are all playing at the same time, and now we need to make them sound good together.
Yeah.
And so let's go for mixing. Like, let's say, so you have your rough track now, you have all the tracks there. I think it's important to separate the two acts, like the arrangement, the production, and the mixing, because like, let's say you can get too bogged down into sound design before you even have like an idea.
Yeah.
You're like, I want the snare to sound a certain way, but like just do the snare and come back to that.
Yeah.
Like keep the energy going during arrangement.
Yeah, so mixing's a funny one because I spent years going through. So you buy a textbook, and there's loads of studios you can go into, and the engineer will go, and I have to get the kick drum here, and I have to get the snare drum there, and I have to get the hi-hats there, and then they do each sound at a time, and then they solo the vocal, and I did that for years, and I found it very difficult to get good mixes. The first thing that I realised is I used to have an instinct for vocals. I used to go, I don't think I need to be in a controlled environment. I don't think I need loads of acoustics to do good vocals. And then I went, I bet you I can sing in front of the speakers. And I went, if I have a microphone and I have it hypercardioid, so it only picks up from the front, and I put a pop shield there and I sing really close to it, and I angle it away from the so that the sound coming out the speakers isn't going anywhere near the front of the mic. And now I can use an AI tool called Clarity, which really helps clean up any spill. And I reckon for modern pop music and rock music, I can pretty much record anything through that mic.
Yeah.
And I can be in any room.
Yeah.
And people used to say, "Oh no, you have to have booths and all." And then I saw Peter Gabriel, who at the time was one of the biggest. His productions were one of the best in the world, and that's exactly how he did vocals.
Yeah.
I saw it on the documentary. He had 2 speakers, and he just sing into the microphone with the speakers on.
Yeah.
I said, if it works for him, it worked for me.
Yeah. So people, what we're talking about is like, all right. So if I'm recording over the track now, I'm playing the song on big speakers. There's a chance that my microphone will pick up the sound from them big speakers.
Yeah.
And so. But that doesn't actually matter that much. Like Bono, I think, for you too.
I think he's a 58 or 50.
He does a similar method where he wants the music loud.
Yeah.
And then so he can get the energy of the track.
Yeah, well, headphones can put you out of key. So,
yeah. I've had that problem.
So I prefer it this way because they definitely do me. But like, it's not for everybody, and that's fine. But I wanted to say that because the second thing is I mix in a room that has no acoustics.
Yeah. No treatment.
No treatment. No,
it's not a special room.
No, it's a room like this, and it's got problems with sound.
Yeah.
So how do you get around that? Well, all you need to do is make sure you have a good set of speakers. So how did I pick mine? Well, I checked out that loads of professionals use the ones I have that do, and they've done top mixes on them, and they're in top studios. So that's why I got them. And they weren't dear. They're only 500 quid. And then the second thing I did was I listened to loads of records through them.
Yes.
And now, when you listen to loads of records, you have to consider one thing. Those records are already mastered. We can talk about that in a minute. So when you listen to your stuff, you need to put a device that simulates mastering on it as well. And then you compare, you get the levels of your references, the same level as the level of your track. And you start listening to loads of things like that, and you'll get used to how your speakers produce top quality stuff in that room.
Yes.
And what tends to happen is then if you start mixing like that, they'll come out really good. They come out like the records. So the key thing is, very first thing is reference loads of famous records through your speakers that you're
in
mixing
the room.
In the room that you're mixing in.
Because then you'll know what good music sounds like in that
the room.
room.
Yeah.
So that's the most important bit.
You'll know what professional music should sound like. Yeah. And you can start working you'll recognize it. And recognizing it is half the battle. And takes a while for your ears to become accustomed to music coming through your speakers that you mix on.
Yes.
But if you do that, so that's step number one. And then, so step number two is then I start mixing, and there's loads of different ways to get a mix, but the first thing I do is a rough balance. And how that works is, like, I start off with all the faders at 0, and I try and use gain inputs and outputs to get what's called gain stage everything. So my kick drum, and this is very important for digital music, is you need to gain stage it through the plugins. That means it needs to be going in and out of the plugins at sort of where the level on the indicator is sort of around 0 all the time. Yeah. Or -10 in some cases, and -6 is another one.
Yeah.
The reason for that is because when you drive, when you overload, you have to remember that all these, so say I have 40 channels of instruments and I'm going to mix them to 2 tracks. They're all summing up. All their energy is summoned to the stereo output.
Yeah.
And if I have these all really loud, I'm getting rid of all the headroom, which makes your mixes sound really small.
Yeah.
Whereas if I have them all at optimal levels.
So headroom is like the distance between
the headroom on the
0
meter.
and like where your track is playing at, because you can't go over. Just think of 0 like the maximum volume that your track can be
so
at.
there's 2 zeros on a desk, so I should have explained that.
Okay.
Yeah, so the 0 I'm talking about on the channel faders is actually -10, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's where what happens is when you load a track, it's preset there, I think.
Yes.
And then the output bus shouldn't go past -6.
Yeah.
Because usually, and the reason for that is when people master, they usually add about 6 mastering plugins.
Yeah.
And each plugin adds 1 dB of gain.
Yeah.
So you need 6 dB of headroom.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, all that is you should read up on levels and gain staging.
Yeah.
Because we could sit here all day and talk about that. Like, you have to gain stage everything. Like, if you, like, one thing that people forget is if you've got a drum loop that's coming from a plugin, all the plugins pump their level up really loud, so that when you hear it, it's like in your face. You go, "Oh, that's great," but that's really bad for a mix.
Yeah,
you need to turn that down so that the levels are sort of at the. They should never be got. They should always be in the green for digital. Always. Yeah. They shouldn't really peak into orange.
Yeah.
You can use saturation plugins for that, but because I used to peak them into orange all the time, I'm going, why are my mixes so small? And then when someone in real world pointed this out to me, and when I started doing this, the mixes got bigger.
Yes.
It was like the space just opened up on the top.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? And so it's very, very important that you gain stage through the plugins. So that you have to constantly watch that as you put plugins on.
Yeah.
And that you gain stage, and that you have the gain set right on the track. And then all those gains, when they go to the output bus, your output bus should be then. So that's the output pair should be should be showing -6 maximum.
Yes.
Peak -6. So it's peaking at -6.
When all the tracks are playing at once, it should be peaking around -6 during the mix phase.
And then you should put on something that simulates. And now we've got that. That's a balance, yeah?
When you're talking about balance, you're adjusting. It's just volume.
Yeah.
The volume of each individual track.
But the other thing is I always make sure that I can, each instrument, as I add each instrument into mix, I go right back to the first one and go, can I hear the bass drum?
Okay.
Can I hear the snare?
The bass drum is the kick.
Yeah. Can I hear?
So you'd have to so in your head, it's like your anchor point is like the kick drum.
Yeah.
Like, can I hear the kick drum as I'm adding
everything else?
The point. So
everything has it vanished.
So it's relative to the kick drum. Let's just say you pick an anchor point, and when you're mixing, it's like everything's relative to that because you need something to anchor your ear to.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And you add in one thing at a time, and by the time you get to the end, I should be able to hear everything clearly if I zone in on it for a second.
Yes.
And
that takes time. Like, so training your ear, because I think just by working with you and listening to the songs real intently and trying to listen for mistakes, it kind of built, like with my voice, let's say, with my vocal, like that built me such an intuition. Because most of the time when you're playing me back track, I'm just listening to my vocal because that's my part in a way. But then you start, your ears, I remember I was in Mayo, right, and I was walking down the street and it was the first time my ears heard in stereo. I could hear something playing in this ear. And then I started freaking out. I started going, is there something wrong with my head? And I started flipping the ears around. But it's because I'd reached a new point where I could actually distinguish the stereo field. Like, and that was a real interesting insight because I didn't realize that pursuing music production would help me enjoy music more. It's not that people think like learning music theory and everything ruins it and all. It enhances your ability to enjoy it. So I just wanted to say that, and just like training your ear to hear individual elements. Because you'll play me a track and you'll be like, did you not hear that thing there? And suddenly he points to it and I still can't hear it, and then he'll isolate it, and then it's doing this tiny, like your ears are like little, they're so adapted to sound. Like you can pick out, even when we're sitting in a cafe, you'll just pick out a tiny thing in a song and I'm just listening and then I'm hoping to hear it. And it's like, do you not hear that little thing happening there?
Yeah, but what was funny is I remember seeing someone, Chad Blake I think, was doing a mix, it was him and someone else, and they had a bass sound, and then the next thing I discovered that I heard the end result, and then I heard one thing they did was they layered a tremolo, a Fender organ with tremolo on it, or Fender piano, playing the exact same line down the bass as the bass. And I didn't know that. I thought this was this bass guitar
on its own.
But then I also saw something about Sledgehammer, how they got that sound, and it was to do with the pick and the strings and a whole bunch of stuff. And the guitar type and like.
So imagine if when we're talking about layering, it's like if I play something on the guitar and then I play the same thing on the piano. That's like 2 layers, let's say.
Yeah, but you make it sound like a guitar.
Yeah. Exactly.
So you make the piano sound, you pull it right back, so you can barely hear it.
So you create a new sound. Yes.
Yeah.
And you're probably maybe going towards trying to, if you think something is just one sound, let's say you thought, that's just one bass instrument. But then when your ears get so good, you can kind of distinguish the different layers.
Yeah, and sometimes that can be a good or a bad thing. Like for me, like I remember hearing "Stupid Girl" and they have a bit where it goes "Stupid Girl," and that's a guitar and the backing vocal doing the same thing. And when I didn't know, it sounded like this cool sound. But as soon as I was able to hear the 2 sounds separately, it sounded really. I went, oh no, that's just really ordinary. You know, so sometimes when you can isolate them, it's a bad thing. Like you have to be able to get back then to hearing it the way you wanted it to be, like a single sound.
Yes, I found this as well. So if you're usually when most people hear a song that you've made, they're hearing the song, the full song.
Yeah.
But if you were in the middle of production, like you might be just hearing that particular part that you were just working on, or I'll just be hearing the vocal. And then sometimes if I remember I was listening to ABBA after I did my song, and I just noticed that the pronunciation of their words, actually, they weren't pronouncing the word. You couldn't hear the end because I was focused on. I can't hear the end in my song. But that's made me realize there's some things you need to let go of because they're actually not that important.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I do with the vocal is if I have a really good vibe, I let loads of things go on it.
Yeah.
If it just sounds like it's some sort of, I just let all sorts of little things go because I just wreck it.
100%.
And I've seen loads of people, including myself, wreck songs by being way too nitpicky.
Yeah.
You know, and Like, I mean, when you look at things like the Beatles and Bowie and all used to do things in one take.
Yeah.
Like, the whole song was just one take. Like, the whole, not all like the band.
The band would play. They do a few, that's it.
And that was it. Yeah. And you're like going, there's a lot to be said for that.
There's lots to be said for that.
You know, and it's like overcomplicating anything in life. When you overcomplicate everything, you make a mess.
Yes.
And, like, sometimes, sometimes I'm listening to songs which are technically brilliant and have loads of technically brilliant things going on, but then you realise there's not a lot of music going on in the track. It's a lot of special effects.
Yeah.
And if you like that kind of thing, that's great. But, there's also, there's still room, I think, for doing recordings where it's just a band playing and the players are really good.
Yeah.
And you don't use any special effects. You use the band to create everything.
But, sometimes, if you look at the songs that you gravitate towards, you might think they need all this stuff, but there's so many beautiful songs that are just like Rob Thomas. Like, he has some real good guitar songs. He does like Beeswing, actually the original, and then he does this one 1950, like about a motorbike, but it's just him and the guitar.
Yeah.
And then there's certain songs that are just the piano and a person, and it doesn't need all that extra stuff because it's a good song. Yeah. It's an actual good song.
Yeah.
And that's like, if you have a good song, you can do all the stuff.
Well, that's the next thing. The next thing. So so I've told you those things, and then another thing is mix the song without solo and everything. Yes. So start, when you've got that balance and all, start moving things around while you're listening to the whole track, because I learned this. If a car can't drive if you take all the parts. So if you go, well, there's the wheels, there's the engine. If you have them all lying on the ground, the car can't drive. Yeah. When you put them all together, it's very difficult to say, what is the car? Yes. Is the car all the parts? Yeah. The truth of it, the answer is it's both. Yes. The parts are the car and the car is the parts. The song is the same. Once it's all together, you can't really separate its parts without wrecking it. Yes. Do you know what I mean? So you need to kind of mix it as a complete unit. Yeah, so what we're saying is, right, so when we're mixing, we have all our tracks all playing at once. Instead of saying, okay, I'm going to get this piano sound, I'm going to play it on its own, I'm going to turn off all the other tracks so I can start messing around with that sound on its own. Whereas, but then when you put everything back on, it's all weird. It's all weird because you thought in isolation it sounded really good. Yeah. But in context, when you play everything else, so mixing in context is very important because that's where it's going to be at in a way, and that's where you want it to sound good. Yeah, and a big thing is what's called high pass filtering all the instruments that don't have bass end. Yes. Because there's loads of frequencies that even though they need it, you don't, the bass is doing the job down there, and you don't. So what happens is, even though you, if you listen to, say I cut off loads of bottom end in the piano, you'll notice it sound a bit honky on its own. But when you put it into the track, you just hear the piano. No, because the bass is kind of filling up that space. Yeah. Yeah, so what we're saying, when we say high pass filter, we're just saying, if you're playing a piano sound, let's say you just have a kick, a bass, and a piano. The kick and the bass are playing in that low frequency, so the piano doesn't need to add to that frequency. No, so you just basically use an EQ to cut all the frequency that the bass and the kick are already playing out of the piano, and allow the high frequencies to pass. Yeah, that's what it's called, a high pass. Yes, that's the one it's called. And then for cymbals, you don't need the low bits of cymbals. No. All you need is the low bits of the cymbals are just going to get caught up and cause mud. And then when the problem is when you start mixing, let's say you start adding effects and all. If you have, let's say you have all those low piano frequencies, when you add the compressor to that, or you add the saturation, just increases them even more. Yeah, it's adding all that extra. So cuts, big cuts of does my vocal need to have the bass in it? No, not really. I put my vocal from 100 down all the time. Yeah. And then same with all the instruments, 100, 150 sometimes. Yeah. I mean, there's special reasons when maybe you wouldn't do that, but that's about it. Yeah, no, of course. And sometimes if it's a sparse arrangement, maybe. Yeah. So it's not at all, it's just, these are big sweeping rules that you could get a basic good mix with. Yeah. And then the other thing I suppose to know is if I hate working on a song where the song isn't, the song should always be good with just a guitar and a vocal, or a piano and a vocal. Yes. If there's a problem there, it doesn't matter what I do, the track is still going to have a problem. Yeah. So, and how do you decipher that? Well, I suppose you just get used to what a good song is.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that just takes practice and listening and listening and listening and listening. And you just get to know that. So there is a quick way to some of this stuff, but there's some stuff that just comes over time because your ear has to get used to things, and that's all you can do.
Yeah, what I found is that you can describe stuff in like these terms, but then when you get into the weeds, you start doing stuff that you don't really, that was unplanned. As in, because you just kind of, you work in a kind of emotional way where you just hear things and stuff's happening and you explain after. Then you're like, oh yeah, I heard this and that and now I'm doing this.
Yeah, well, there's always the notes part. So that notes part is supposed, or the sound, especially guitar sounds can be really, you know, so that's where you're trying to create something a bit distinctive.
Yeah.
With the melody and the notes and the sound. And that just usually takes wandering around the place for a while. Yeah. You know, or kind of having an idea that this will probably happen somewhere up here and piecing it together, and then suddenly hitting a couple of notes and it sounds really good. And then you just get into a zone and then you start breaking some of the rules, which can be really frustrating for someone trying to learn and watching someone do it. But I don't really know how to describe that, except that when you don't know how to do something, it doesn't sound good. Then you learn how to do something and it's all very technical and by the book. And then when you know how to do it, you just go back to the way you use it. You know, It all becomes very fluid and it's a bit more instinctive again. And
it's like this old proverb of when you start, let's say, boxing, a punch is a punch. And then you find out it's not just a punch, it's all this technical stuff. And then you learn all the stuff. And then you come back to a punch is a punch.
Yeah, you're just punching differently.
Yes, but you had to go down all these paths and learn, and think that it was all this other stuff. But then you become back to that place.
Yeah, but with a correct technique, so now it's all automatic. And so it's the same with this. You're doing everything innovatively, but with all the correct technique, so that you don't have masking problems and you don't have muddy stuff and you don't have small mixes and you don't have bad gain staging. And you just start doing it all automatically. And then, everybody's got their own way of doing it.
Yeah.
I get a bit annoyed with these videos that say, this is the only way. Yeah. You know, it's not.
No, I've seen, just on that, it's like, there's this guy, he does all Taylor Swift's music, but like Jack Abrahoff or something, but he'll automate the master track, right?
Yeah.
And he'll draw in these crazy lines of like reverb and stuff in weird places, and he just draws it in manually, and it looks really laborious, but he just does it every now and again to make a weird kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you're just like, why would you automate the master track? That seems a bit mental.
Yeah.
But it works for him.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't do it, but that's good.
Yeah. So there's all these, so it's just about trying to find your own way of doing things as a music producer, but as a singer-songwriter, all this stuff is mental. Like, I remember buying my first audio interface. To this point now, I was like, I didn't understand anything about recording. I was so naive about microphones and everything. Now I have a good bit of knowledge because I've just been pursuing it. But it's hard, like, if you're just trying to make a song. And even if, when I started, I didn't know any music theory. The first songs I did, I was sending him chords that I thought were the chords, but they weren't the chords because my brain was just... Like, I didn't understand keys. I didn't understand so much.
Yeah, well, it was the same for me when I was doing songs. I go, that's C7, I sure could just play a C. Or that's C9, I sure could just play a C. Or that's C13. But actually, those things like ninths and 13ths make a huge difference to the tone. And now I've realised it's very important to play the right chords when they come up.
Yes.
And don't be trying to play just a C. Because you're losing a whole quality of tone. That's really important, and they all have a different way of sounding. You know,
so a little bit of music theory goes a very long way. I think you don't need to know you need to if you know like scales and chords, and then there's I like with the way I think of it now, right? So if I'm playing, imagine you're just playing chords until you find the one that sounds good for that part of the song. The reason it probably sounds good is because let's say you're playing a C, like just the chord is C, E, G.
Yeah.
And your melody has a C in it, but it might have like a D in it. And then as the melody's moving through the chord, it's not just making a C, it's making like a C sus or a C add 9.
Yeah.
So your melodies, you're actually always singing chords.
Yeah.
Like, as in, at any time, the track is one chord at any moment.
Yeah,
Does that feel about right?
Yeah, all the time. And there's really only two things, chords and a melody. That's it. Like everything, and rhythm, 3.
Yes.
Rhythm, chords, melody. And so rhythm's harmony, melody. That's all you've got.
Yes.
And if you bring it back to that, then you'll realise that all your instruments are voicings.
Yes.
And they're all just one big
megachord.
Yeah, well, there's one other thing, tonal as well. So that's overtones. So that gives character.
So overtones is very interesting, right? So because fundamentally, right, when we hear sound in our ears, we're hearing like a sine wave is just the simplest version of a sound, right? But when you're speaking to me, lots of sine waves combine and make your voice, let's say. So fundamentally, like a synthesizer can just produce a single sound, a sine wave. But when we're talking about overtones, you play a C on a piano. You're not just playing the C. The reason it sounds like a piano is because it also plays the G at a particular frequency or volume,
but much lower.
Yes, much lower. So it adds when you play a C, you're actually playing lots of other notes, but those notes are lower, and it gives it a piano sound.
Yes.
And same with your voice. Our voices have overtones, so the tones that that actually make a guitar, or a piano, or a trumpet. It's all the volume of the overtones after it, in a way.
Yeah. So but like, I mean, and you could, if you got into synthesis, you could get big into that.
Oh yes.
But overtones are just basically their colorations, and they're what distinguish. So why does a piano sound different to a guitar? Well, because it's got bigger metal strings in the body. The wood is probably different. Yes. So they all produce different overtones when they vibrate, different notes when they vibrate to the guitar. But the fundamental, if we play an A on a guitar and an A on a piano, is the same. And that's why
the loudest frequency would be the C, let's say.
Would be the C or the whatever note you're playing. And that's what gives it the musicality.
Yes.
And so
timbre is another word for it, is it?
Yeah, timbre is just timbre is just French for tone, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's where.
Sorry, you're going to say. I think you're going to say something.
No, I mean that's really it. That's kind of, and then I produced my own stuff. I do a bit differently now, you know. So my own stuff, I kind of go. I have 2 ways of doing my own stuff. It starts with the song. So first of all, I'll either go, there's a song I wrote. It's a good song. It'll usually come out a certain way. It'll usually be something I could play on the guitar with chords, and it's usually fairly simple. And it's 4-chord tricks, 6 chords maybe at the most. And then I just decide, what do I hear in it, and I just go through a process of the same as artists. What bands do I kind of think it's a bit like, and what type of album am I doing at the minute for myself now? Then there's 2 other types of songs. One is when I go, I want to write a song like say When I'm 64 with all those progressions in it. I have to now think about that. I have to go listen to those kind of songs. I have to go, oh, well, what they're doing is they're using C to G. It's kind of ragtime or skiffle. It's using C to G, which is fifths, so circle of fifths maybe. It's going to I'm just trying to remember the song. It's using that C7 thing to an F minor. It's got these, and then it does a little turnaround, which is C to the A to D to G. And I go, right, then I have to take that chord progression and go, what are they doing? Like, that's a turnaround using the circle of fifths. That's a borrow chord. When they go from there, they go from a major to a minor. And I take all those things, and then I see, now can I do those, take those fields and make a bunch of chords up. And then I'll try loads of different ways to put those chords together. When I get something I like, I have the chord progression. Once I like the chord progression, I'll start trying to figure out what melody am I going to put on top of it. And then I'll end up with a song that's like me, but it reminds you of When I'm 64. Yes. So that's another way to write. And then the last way to write is where I go, I want to sound like the Sex Pistols, right? I can't write like that. So the first thing I have to do is I'm just going to get chords, drum pattern. I'm going to write the backing track first. And I'm going to write it in that style. I'm going to use those kind of chords. And then when I finish, I'm going to come up with a melody. And usually the melody sounds like me, and that makes it distinctive. Okay. There are different ways I'd write a song.
Yeah. So we are coming up to our hard out, unfortunately.
Okay.
But I really appreciate it. So we haven't even scratched the surface.
No, we can do volume 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, I love to have you back because I love the thing I like about speaking with you. I'll say love speaking about you is that when we're just talking and just all your musical knowledge and history, and it's just real. It's real cool because we're just like nerds. Like I'm an up and coming nerd, but you're like a full blown music nerd. And I love just hearing your insight into all the different types and ways and interpretations of just music and how vast it is. And it's just I really enjoy these conversations, and there's loads I'd love to get into again. But for now, let's say, where can people find you? What are you doing? Where do you want people to go to?
So at the minute, I've actually got nowhere they can find me at the moment because I'm kind of trying to move and I'm also trying to rebuild something. And I had a website type thing, but it's on pause at the minute. So how am I going to do this? At the moment, you can probably find me through the Songwriting Collective, the IMRO Songwriting Collective, because I'm running that.
Yes.
So that'll probably be the easiest way to get in touch with me. How would you get onto that?
Is it like a meetup?
You just go to Meetup and you put in Songwriting Collective.
Meetup.com or whatever. Song Collective Dublin.
Songwriting, and they've also got an Instagram.
Yes.
So if someone wanted to reach out to me,
I'll put all the Instagram stuff on there.
Yeah. So that's probably at the minute. When I do get the website stuff sorted again, I'll give you the website and the email, and then people can get me. Or they could just get in touch with me through the email, robsonic2008@gmail.com.
Okay.
That'd be the handiest way for the minute.
Yeah, and then if you want to go to IMRO to see him in the
flesh, do one of the talks. Yeah,
you can go in there
every month.
Yeah, every month there's a talk, and then there's the do you do
songwriting? Then they do the songwriting together. And that's great for songwriters because they get to write with different people, and which force them to write in a way that they haven't done before.
Yeah.
And they come up with different songs.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
And then is there an open mic? Is that the same thing?
The open mic then is where songwriters come down and just play their songs. And they're both really busy at the minute. So the open mic is every second week. At the moment, it's in Bar 51, just off Bagot Street.
Okay.
It's off of one of the roads. It's on the Canal Road. I'm not sure what that road is called. And then the IMRO showcases usually happen once. IMRO songwriting workshops usually happen once a month. The next one is on the 12th of March.
Okay.
In IMRO building, which is just off Bagot Street, Pembroke Road.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll get all the links into all the stuff.
Yeah, I'll send them along to you as well so that you can just include them all.
But this is round one, hopefully. Done and dusted for now.
25
He must go off. Yeah, he needs to go off and save the other people with their music-related problems.
Yeah, super producer.
But I appreciate this, man.
No worries, thanks. I love it.
I appreciate his work as well. Like, listen to that album that I have out. I'm redoing some of the tracks because I fucked up the mastering on those tracks, but we won't get into that now. He's been nice about it, but it is what it is. Mastering's for another chapter. Don't mess with the masters. Like, as soon as the track is finished, don't start messing with it. Because
causes problems.
It causes problems.
Don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And until later, and then you hear it. And then even your man said at Abbey Road, he said, there's something wrong with these, but I just ignored him. And I was just like, it's grand. Because I was going through some weird shit at the time.
Yeah.
Anyway, we come through that.
Yeah.
And we're
out the other side.
We're out the other side. We're coming back though. And I'm adding harmonies and loads of shit. But I think I got to a stage where I just wanted to start fucking with things.
But you had to do that. We've all gone through that.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone could get through music without going through those stages.
Yeah.
I know I did.
Yeah. So it is what it is, but we're going to be working on some new music as well. And I'm looking forward to getting back on the track.
Good. That's great. Yeah, it'll be cool.
Brilliant. All right, and we'll catch you in the next one.
See you soon.